Welcome to College Football Monday, a Sons of Saturday live show brought to you by Jack and Coke. I'm your host, Pete B. I've got Sam Jesse here. Sam, we missed you last week on the episode with French. How you been, buddy?
Been good. It's been a good start to the holiday season. Later after this show, hopping in the car, headed up to Richmond for Christmas Eve and Christmas Day. So looking forward to it.
Nice. Yeah, I will be local, which is always nice. Well, I guess it's about an hour. How far is Richmond for you?
A little over an hour.
Okay, so the same. It's not, to me, that's local. I don't have to get on a flight. I don't have to travel too far, which is always welcome.
Yeah.
Going down to my mom's place, all the cousins will be in tow. Some drinking will be done. And tonight, I'm going to be drinking a Christmas-themed beer, and perhaps the last one of the season, because Christmas is upon us. It is the 23rd. Tomorrow is Christmas Eve, but we weren't going to let the holiday get in the way of an episode of College Football.
I'm not going to let the birth of Jesus Christ get in the way of talking some college football, Pete.
That's right, man. So, Sam, why don't you kick us off with the cheers?
My cheers is to the 12-team playoff discourse. Oh, goodness. This sport never, ever has a dull moment, even when the games are blowouts. Somehow it just finds a way to give us nothing but content. So I'm really looking forward to the next round. I hope we have some better games. I got to be honest, I was a bit disappointed. So here's to better games in the future.
Cheers, buddy. I'm drinking another very dark beer, and it is good. And I will talk about it shortly. I've also got my Christmas best on, as you can see, the lumberjack with the sycamore hat to match.
Beautiful.
I'm wearing that hat actually because we're doing an episode down in Charlotte, or I should say, because we're having a bowl game down in Charlotte, there may be a chance for us to do an episode in Charlotte, because I know you're going to be down. The boys may be down. I'm still working some things out. If I am there will be some content. But there's a chance we'll be doing an event at Sycamore, which would be pretty sweet.
If we do, I'm there.
All right, man. So tonight we're going to get into the recaps of the playoff games for sure. We're going to talk about Virginia Tech's most recent hire, because we finally got some coaching hire news today, and I'm pretty pumped about it. It seems like it's a good hire, and we're going to talk about that when we get to VT Corner. And we're also going to talk about some of the guys that announced they're coming back to Blacksburg next year, and some of the new portal additions, because we've been very active since the last time me and you recorded together.
Yeah, I mean, been absolutely crazy. We knew kind of a wave was going to come. So it was good to see all of that kind of happen in 1 or 2 days.
For sure. We got a season's greetings from Les Hodges. Les, thanks for being in the chat. Make sure you are liking the video, subscribing to the channel, and offering any kind of chat questions or commentary you have, and we'll add it to the screen throughout. So there was a ton of conversation, as you already alluded to, about the game results and what they mean for the sport. And Robert Irby pointed this out to us in the chat. It's just kind of what college football fans do, that they'll take a couple of game results and make it a dissertation on the sport. And we saw that from not only people like me and you, who are truly fanatics of the sport, but Kirk Herbstreit, Lane Kiffin was getting in there. We've seen Saban do it. So many pundits. Shannon Sharp in First Take was mixing it up with Kirk regarding certain things. It's funny how, when you go to just what happened this past weekend, how people are like, well, this playoff format's no good. There were too many blowouts.
Yeah. And what's also weird is, like, the reason the reason those first round games were the results that they were wasn't really because of the teams that they chose. It's the format they chose. Like, I feel like in any year, the way that you're setting up, 5 versus 12, and it's at 5's stadium, like, we already know the level between, like, maybe the top 7 or 8 teams and then the next 7 or 8 teams is such a big jump in college football. We've always known that. So in many ways, these results were to be expected. Now, I think myself and you, Pete, were kind of hoping that somebody would play out of their mind, right? That, Jennings would play unreal for SMU, or that Indiana would keep their magic, or that Tennessee would play up to their potential. It didn't happen.
Right.
And you looked at the spreads of these games and looked at the results of these games, and it was pretty expected.
And I did think certain teams had a chance to keep it close, and the spreads were all a touchdown. So in some ways, or more. And so in some ways, this was kind of what you thought might happen. But we had also been saying all season that, you know, these teams aren't that far apart. Like, it doesn't seem like all of these teams are that far apart. But when you add in the home field advantage in December, it can kind of change some of that stuff.
I think home field advantage was so much bigger than what people thought it was going to be.
Yeah, including me and you, I think. Like, it
Yeah.
it really played a factor. I know we talked about all the games last week with Billy and Casey, but I felt really good about Penn State and Ohio State. Maybe not quite as good as the other two, but yes, if you're looking at the regular season being important, it is important to get a bye, and it is important to get home field advantage in
Oh,
this playoffs.
yes. Oh, yes. That's huge.
Also, regarding blowouts, there were plenty of blowouts in the 4-team playoff. There have been blowouts in the BCS championship and in the championship game as recently as TCU and Georgia. Not always does this get weeded out. In the FCS playoffs, there are constantly blowouts.
Oh my gosh.
In the NFL playoff, there are plenty of blowouts, even in the Super Bowl. So it was a bad weekend because there wasn't just one game that was close, but the symptom of having playoff like wide margins is not unique at any level of football.
Yeah, I just think it's, again, that gap between whoever those top 7 or 8 teams are one year and then the next 7 or 8 teams is just pretty darn big in college football. And it doesn't matter what format you use to figure it out. Like, there's always going to be levels to this thing.
And here's what they did in error, though, that will play itself out next week, and we'll see. But we've already had a weekend of blowouts. And because of the seeding now, there's potential we could get a couple more in round 2. Now, I wouldn't expect Georgia or Notre Dame to be a blowout, and I wouldn't expect Oregon and Ohio State to be a blowout, but you don't know. But the other 2 matchups, people are already pointing to them and the spreads, and that because of the seeding, now we're going to deal with it again. They need to fix the seeding thing.
Yeah.
I do agree with that.
Yeah.
Okay, let's move to just a couple comments on the portal, and we'll get to the game recaps. Auburn is still adding top players. If you're going to just what's going on around the nation, we've got Texas Tech leading the way in the transfer composite ranking, whatever, best transfer classes. LSU right behind them, then Ole Miss, and now Auburn with the big addition of Singleton today. Those are your 4 big spenders so far. They're kind of just a little bit of a level ahead of everyone else. That Texas Tech one is surprising, Sam.
Yeah, it is. But that's, again, one of those programs that they've pulled in big recruits before. It's not totally abnormal for them. And also, I think the idea of going to a campus and being the number 1 guy from the start is still really attractive for some of these players. So I think you're going to see some moves like that every now and again.
Yeah, and they're clearly making it a focus. And we mentioned last week how Auburn, this was their year that they were going to try to go all in with Hugh Freeze. Ole Miss isn't afraid to spend money. We've seen that in the past too. But nevertheless, right now, early in this thing, and LSU, who really didn't spend much money at all, and Brian Kelly even talked about it last year, is back. And they're spending, baby, and they're spending on Virginia Tech guys.
Yeah. Dude, they wanted some guys last year. Now they're getting some guys this year. Really? I wonder if, like, Brian Kelly watched one Virginia Tech game last year. Like, do you think he watched the Thursday night game against Syracuse and was like, I need every one of those players? And it's just held on to that for a while.
Yeah, you're talking about either Syracuse a year ago or this year against BC or something. Yeah.
Yeah.
This one of these national games where he's not playing that night and he's like, oh, I kind of like that guy. I think I'm going to get that Delane guy next year. But yeah, it was talked about that they did not go hard enough in the portal last season, and it kind of showed up on the field this year, and they wasted 2 really good years of O-line play down at LSU and a Heisman winner. So now they decide they're going to spend the money. So we'll see how it works out for them this time around. Let's get to Notre Dame beating Indiana on Friday night, 27-17. The funniest thing about this score, as I now look at it, is it was the closest of all the games, and it was the one where people were crapping all over the addition of Indiana.
How this game didn't end 40-10 blows my mind. If you're watching this game unfold, at no point did Indiana look like they were in the same league as Notre Dame. At no point. And then just out of the blue, like Notre Dame missed a field goal, and then Indiana gets the ball, scores on no. They punted a few times after that. But then Indiana did the like score, onside kick, score. Like they got 14 points in the blink of an eye.
Right.
It was crazy. And if they would have gotten the 2-point conversion on their second touchdown, they would have been onside kicking for a chance to tie the game. So crazy. Notre Dame just feels like they started milking the clock at the start of the second half and missed a field goal. Had a couple of drives that it looks like they were going to score and just kind of sputtered out. So maybe a little bit of worry for the Notre Dame defense heading into this game against Georgia. Or Notre Dame offense,
No,
excuse me.
I don't. The Notre Dame defense, you think, should be a little worried?
I misspoke. The offense.
Offense.
I think
Okay,
I think the offense didn't have. There wasn't a ton of killer instinct from Riley Leonard in that Irish offense, and that is not what I want to see heading into a game against Georgia.
So you're chalking up the 98-yard run by Love as like slightly fluky. I mean, the safety took a horrible angle on that play.
Yeah.
And like they shouldn't have. I mean, it was a great play by Love, don't get me wrong. And it might be the longest rushing play in CFP history for a very long
hard to
time.
beat.
It's going to be hard to beat.
I mean, they were really good. Like they had a 48% success rate. They were really good on third down, but not a very explosive game from Notre Dame. They only had 3 explosive plays. I think they just kind of suffocated Indiana. And I don't know if they'll be able to do that against Georgia.
Yeah.
Maybe they kept some stuff in the bag though, because that game was, again, like they had that game under control pretty much the whole time.
They knew they were going to win very early on. I mean, it was 27-3 before those touchdowns. This thing was over, like dead. And Indiana added 126 yards late to make their total 278. So like they were under 200 yards while this game was kind of in question, or while Notre Dame was playing hard enough, I guess. But we knew that Notre Dame didn't have the explosive stuff on offense, and they got one. And
they got one.
They
got a big one.
They plenty throughout to win the game easily. And Indiana even had that interception where Notre Dame was kind of driving down the field and Riley Leonard threw that interception. So
yeah,
it could have been worse. Like you said, it could have been 40-3 or whatever. And can we talk about Sig for a minute and the punting down multiple scores late in the game?
I just, he tried to rationalize it at the end of the game. The man was cold and it was a blowout and he wanted to go home. Like, I think that was
almost worked though. Like you just said it yourself. If they had gotten that onside kick, it might have worked. Yeah, but I agree. It seemed from what he's been saying and his brashness on the pregame show and all that stuff to then punt in that situation.
Yeah.
It just didn't jive.
No, it didn't. And honestly, the whole like Indiana, great story, overachieved, played really well this season, dominant at points. Ohio State shut down their offense. Michigan shut down their offense. Notre Dame shut down their offense. Like the 3 teams with a pulse that they played shut down their offense. And I'm a little skeptical of it going into next year. Like, I don't think we can assume Indiana's a team that can compete at the top of the Big Ten yet again next year. I just don't see it. Good for them. I think it was a great story, and I think they deserve to be where they were, but a pretty predictable outcome with the help of hindsight, of course.
Yeah. Les, I did want to mention, I see your comment about the O-line coach. I'm going to add it to the screen when we get to VT Corner. That's probably coming up in about 20 to 30 minutes. We're going to cover the rest of these games, maybe do an ad break and get to VT Corner. But the last comment I'll say on Notre Dame going forward, as they will play Georgia, as Sam has mentioned, it's the Sugar Bowl. This could be a very slobber knockery Sugar Bowl, despite being on turf. Like, it could resemble the SEC championship game.
Can we do a little game right here? Like, what do you think are the most important things of winning a big game? Like coach, quarterback, line of scrimmage, overall defense.
I would say quarterback. I mean, line, they all go hand in hand, but like if you're talking about a big game, you want D-line, you want a quarterback and coach in some order.
Okay, better quarterback.
I'll go with Notre Dame.
Okay. Better defensive line of scrimmage.
That's really hard this year because Georgia doesn't quite have the dudes as they normally do.
I will say,
I'll
I
probably
think
give the edge to them.
Notre Dame's best pass rusher, I think, is out. I think he got hurt for that.
I'm going to give the edge to Georgia on the D line.
Coach?
Whew. I mean, you got to give it to Kirby. You got to, but Marcus has not been in a ton of these situations.
He's won a lot of big games.
He has. He's also lost a couple.
He's also
remember the end of the Ohio State game where he like had the wrong amount of guys on the field or whatever it was.
All I'm saying is like I don't know of a spot on the field where I think Georgia is far superior to Notre Dame. And I think Notre Dame clearly has the quarterback in their favor.
Yeah, I mean, the quarterback thing with Stockton, we don't know a ton about him. He literally played for a half of football.
Yeah.
But I think we know that he wasn't Georgia's starter, and the upside for him is not as great as Beck's. And Leonard has been very, very good this year and was good last year for Duke. Like we know Riley Leonard can compete at this level, and what he can do with his legs can really it can mess with a team like Georgia and what they're doing on defense. So honestly, I like Notre Dame's chances a ton. We went over this a little last week, how we like Notre Dame.
I think it's going to be a great game. I think it's going to be really close. I personally have Notre Dame money line in this one because I think it's a good value for the team with a better quarterback. But this should be your close game. This is going to be a good one.
And I think this and then the Ohio State game against Oregon, those are the two high-profile games this weekend. Like Notre Dame, Georgia, like what a great matchup. Awesome. It's gonna be great color war. It's gonna be perfect. All right, so let's move to Penn State. We'll talk a little bit more about the matchups and the spreads at the end of the show. Penn State dominates SMU 38-10. This was the worst game of the weekend by a competition standpoint. SMU blew multiple chances early on to put points on the board or make some plays. And Jennings was just terrible. Like early on in that, they had that fourth down. He could have clearly ran for the first down, and he tossed it to a wide open player in the wrong direction, and they didn't get the first down. And then it felt like, okay, that was a huge missed opportunity. And then he throws 2 pick sixes right after that, pretty much.
Yeah, he was bad. He was bad. He looked like a true freshman playing in Happy Valley. And that first, so it was the fourth down play where he kind of has a run pass option. Could have ran for the first down pretty easily.
Yeah.
Decided to throw it to an open tight end, but he just kind of lofted it behind, and it got jarred loose. And it's like
that was a touchdown. Like that was a touchdown.
Yeah. Preston Stone probably makes that touchdown throw. And I was like, oh no, like I tweeted that out. And then right when I hit send, I went, oh no, this is going to go bad for SMU.
They needed that score. That score.
Yeah, it was.
And it probably wouldn't have mattered anyway.
Probably not. But if you also look at this game, I mean, those 2 pick sixes were, I mean, it was 38-10. SMU was moving the ball. They just couldn't finish drives.
Yeah.
You lose 7 points on that fourth down, and then you throw 2 pick sixes. That's a 21-point swing in a 28-point. Like this game could have been very, very different. And it just,
you don't know how
play
that
went Penn State's way.
One play could have changed the way they approached the rest of the game. But we saw Clemson get an early touchdown. We'll talk about it in a minute. It didn't help. So I agree with you. They get that touchdown, but as soon as they didn't get it, I was like, this is going to be a long day for SMU.
Yeah.
And that proved itself out. It was 28-0 at the half before ending 38-10. Wait, was that right? Whatever.
Yep,
Penn State got up huge.
10. A lot to
38-10. I hate to say it, but like by the time the game was over, SMU really didn't look like they belonged. I'm not saying Indiana necessarily did, but like I think you could make a case after watching this game, which isn't how it works, that Miami would have been a better addition to these playoffs.
Oh, yeah.
Alabama would have been a better addition to these playoffs. But was that deserved? And that's why you can't do the revisionist thing.
Yeah, and I also think like we've never known Cam Ward or Jalen Milroe to throw bad interceptions, have we? Never.
You're absolutely right.
Yeah, and like Do you think Miami's defense or Alabama's defense would have had a better shot against Penn State in this game? Like, probably not. Like, SMU's defense is probably on par with those guys.
I think Penn State wins against all those opponents.
Yeah, exactly. Like, I don't think the outcome is very different whether SMU, Miami, or Alabama
And Notre Dame, Alabama, I think would have been very interesting.
Yep.
I think Notre Dame would have beat Miami, like just for what it's worth. Like, just because Cam Ward's incredible and he could potentially put a team on his back because of how important a quarterback is in these games. But in that cold weather on Friday night, I don't think Cam Ward was passing for 400 yards.
Yeah, not at all. I do think also, to kind of put a bow on this game, massive missed opportunity. SMU should have been wearing red.
Yeah, why?
What a mistake.
I thought that as soon as they came out on the field, I'm like, we're getting 2 blue and white teams out here. Like, SMU has a third color.
Notre Dame, Indiana, great uniform game. Yep. Loved it.
Kind of hated Clemson and Texas, dude.
Clemson and Texas made me want to vomit.
Dude, you could barely tell the difference between the teams watching on television.
And this is what makes uniform matchups so interesting, is like Texas home uniforms, gorgeous. Clemson road uniforms, gorgeous. Together, hideous.
Yeah, you got to wear purple. Like, they should have worn purple or something different in the playoff game. But you also don't want to go your first, 12-team playoff and you're wearing your purple jerseys and you lose. Like, that's not, no one's going to like
this
that.
Isn't Wofford. You don't, agreed.
All right, so we'll finish up that 11 tackles for loss for Penn State's defense. They're stars, Carter, Robinson, like they just went off in this game and dominated. Like, they just dominated. So
Abdul Carter might be, of all the players I've seen this season, he's top 5. He's insane.
He's really good. Really good. They will take on Boise State Tuesday the 31st. That's the first game of the next round in the Fiesta Bowl. Tuesday the 31st, New Year's Eve, 7:30 p.m. Fiesta Bowl. Penn State has a rich history in the Fiesta Bowl. They've won a couple or clinched a couple natties playing in the Fiesta Bowl over the years. So that's a fun one. And we know Boise State had the famous Fiesta Bowl. Yeah, so that's going to be interesting. I'd give the edge to Penn State. That's easy to say, but we'll talk more about that at the end. Let's go to Texas and Clemson. We mentioned the uniform matchup wasn't good. I'll start the analysis by saying this. I thought Clemson would easily cover. I thought they might win outright. Neither one of those was right. But Sam, they were the most competitive team of these underdogs this weekend.
I mean, that was the game where I think they played how we thought they would the most. Like, the things Clemson was able to do and the things that they weren't able to do were very, very predictable. I mean, they haven't been able to stop the run all year long. Does not matter the opponent. Doesn't matter where the game is played. They can't tackle. Their linebackers can't fill gaps. Their defensive line gets pushed around. Their safeties and corners have zero interest in tackling. Absolutely zero interest.
And yet Virginia Tech decided to not give any carries to Coney. I'm sorry. Sidetracked there.
Oh man. But that was pretty predictable. I think you were hoping, if you were a Clemson bettor, I think you were hoping, hey, Quinn Ewers hasn't looked great. Does he throw a couple bad interceptions? Just keep checking the ball down. I thought Quinn Ewers looked pretty good.
Yeah.
He didn't. All he had to do was really hand the ball off.
He had to manage the game,
but did pretty well. Credit though to Dabo for making the adjustments. They were much better in the second half. Much better.
Oh, I mean, they cut it to 7. I mean, they had that thing close and actually a little fun for a minute, and Texas made quick work of that with the 77-yard run. And I'll have about we've talked about the running backs from Texas a lot this year because they had a lot of injuries, and you kept joking like, oh, they'll just have to put another 4-star guy back there. Well, Blue had his best game of the season in this game. I know a lot of it came on one thing, but he had another 70 yards beyond the 77-yard run. So, and a couple touchdowns. So he had a fantastic game, put the dagger in him. I was impressed with Klubnik. If you think about where he started the year playing Georgia and how ugly that game was, and then they play Texas, who essentially is just as good as Georgia. They both just went to overtime in the SEC championship game. They're close teams, and they acquitted themselves well, and he did in particularly. 336 yards passing and 3 touchdowns from Klubnik and over 80 QBR. I had kind of said he was going to hold Clemson back this year. He really didn't. He did not do that. So good for him. They couldn't run. Texas could. I was astonished when I saw the final yardage total for Texas in this one, 292 yards rushing.
Yeah.
That is something I didn't think they were capable of against a defense as good as Clemson. So good for them. They're going to play Arizona State against another good rushing team.
Mm-hmm.
We'll see how Scatabo does. But right now, again, Texas has the largest spread. They had the largest spread going into round 1. It's the largest spread this week. I think it's like 14 points against Arizona State.
Yeah, and it will be a really interesting matchup because I think the intangibles are so in favor of Arizona State in this game, and they've had the bye. But the matchup screams Texas. Arizona State is 58th in the country in EPA per rush. Not what you want to see going up against that Texas offensive line, even though that offensive line is beat up. We'll see how healthy they are, but they look really good. Ewers played a good game, and that Texas rush defense is going to be probably the toughest opponent for Cam Scatabo all year.
It's decidedly like not a good matchup for Arizona State.
It's not. And I want Arizona State to like really at least hang in there, like make this a game, show your worth. I want Scatabo to like do one of those crazy Derrick Henry-esque runs. I just don't know if
they
they're
might say like take your bad matchup and shove it up your butt. Like they really might, because they've been doing that for like 4 weeks in a row.
Yeah.
And so we didn't expect the Big 12 championship game to go the way it did. They destroyed Iowa State. And so Texas is not Iowa State, but like they were the hottest team in the country coming into this thing basically. And so I'm very curious how it will play out. The spread is 14 for a reason though. And so we'll talk about that at the end. Ohio State waxes Tennessee 42-17, Sam. So put yourself back on Saturday night. The nightcap is coming. We've seen 3 pretty terrible playoff games, and we're like, all right, SEC, Big Ten, this is the one. This is the one that's going to be the good game. The odds are in our favor. And it was maybe the worst game.
It was, I mean, you have to feel, speaking of the color orange, you have to feel so silly when your team's getting beat by like 5 touchdowns wearing that gaudy ass orange. You got to feel
coming out with your shirts off and then losing like that.
They had a 3-and-out to start the game, right? Like they sacked Kyle McCord, and it was a face mask, and it was
come on now.
Oh wait, no, it's not Kyle McCord. Will Howard. Goodness gracious, I've only had a few sips of the eggnog too.
That's funny,
you got to hold me accountable here. And it was like from the moment that face mask was called, it was game over. Like Ohio State was like, oh, maybe we have like the good luck thing tonight. And then they were like, oh, that number 4 on the outside, what if we just threw him the ball over and over and over again? And they did. And Tennessee had 0 defensive answer. Nico Iamaleava. He's played in probably like 4 really big time, Saturday night games. Not looked good in really any of them.
And I thought he was like the bright spot for Tennessee, Sam. Like
that's
the sad part. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, he was running for his life.
He was
all game. And
that was the only thing that was like he attempted to put the team on his back, because once we saw that Sampson wasn't going to be a factor, we'd been hearing some stuff about like, he's not right, whatever. Well, he had 2 carries and he really wasn't able to go at all. And if, like that was their offense this year. Like Sampson was such a big part of their offense, and like Tennessee was doomed. As soon as it looked like he couldn't play, they were doomed.
Yeah, and they still ran the ball well. Like they were able to pick up chunks like on 3rd and long.
Thanks to
Nico was able to run. They had the kind of option game going for a bit. It's just it felt like Ohio State was faster. It felt like they were more prepared. They had the better quarterback. They had the home field advantage on their side, as much as Vol Nation Twitter didn't want them to. And
how fast? Sorry, I interrupted
No,
you
no,
right
no,
in the
no.
middle of your
Go,
thing,
go. But
man.
like, bad look for the SEC after talking all that smack. Bad look.
Well, you'll notice that Lane Kiffin stopped tweeting during that
Mm-hmm.
game.
Mm-hmm.
That's surprising.
Yeah.
What a baby! I cannot believe that
Loser
guy.
mentality.
Oh my God, just bitching and moaning all Friday night and Saturday morning. Well, yeah, huge win for Ohio State. This was impressive. This is the Ohio State we expected all season. And maybe even better because Travion Henderson, how fast did he look?
Insane.
Yeah.
Judkins came in and it was like the most beautiful, like boom, one cut, ball forward 6 yards. Like they started to get 5 to 7 yards of play the entire third quarter.
Mm-hmm.
Every single play, 5 to 7 yards, 5 to 7 yards. It was just demoralizing for Tennessee.
When you think about the offensive dudes that remain in the playoffs, Genty comes to mind, Tez comes to mind.
Mm-hmm.
Ohio State has like 3 or 4 that are like the biggest, baddest dudes in this thing, according to like going by skill position is what I'm trying to get at. And they're going up against the team that probably has the most on the other side. So it's fascinating because a lot of these offenses, they're not like Penn State's got a good offense, but it's not flashy in any way, really. Like this Ohio State Oregon matchup that's upcoming, you're getting a lot of flash.
I really wish our Final Four could be Oregon, Ohio State, Texas, and then some combination Notre Dame, Georgia, because it feels like those are the best teams left.
It does.
And I really do want that combination of like the defense from Notre Dame and Texas versus the offense from Ohio State and Oregon.
All right, so let's
would
ask
be really interesting.
This question: If the committee re-met this weekend and they reseeded all the teams, is Ohio State 2?
No, they'd keep Georgia at 2. But I think Ohio State would be like, I think Oregon, Georgia, Texas, Ohio State's are top 4 because Pete, that's been the top 4 all year long. Like those from August 1st to December 1st, those were your top 4 teams. And this stupid seeding format ruined that.
Yeah.
And I think if they had a chance to do it over, they would do a lot of things differently with this.
Yeah.
Because it just doesn't even look right.
I know. We're going to get a great game between Ohio State and Oregon. And I wanted to say, we need to talk just quickly. I'll mention it before we move to our VT stuff. Will Howard, super impressive in this game. If you look at his final stats, 24 of 29 for 311 and a 98.8 QBR. That offensive output between him, Judkins, Henderson, Jeremiah Smith going for over 102 touchdowns against Tennessee's defense, that is super impressive. Like that was the most impressive thing about this game, for them to get that output on that Tennessee defense, one that both of us thought was one of the best ones in college football.
Yeah, and I know it's your favorite guy, Chip Kelly. He had Tennessee's linebackers in absolute hell all game. They were having to cover 20, 30 yards down the field. He was running wheel routes, seam routes. He was absolutely destroying the Tennessee linebackers, and they had zero shot. And then you kind of combine that with, if you look at the weakness on this Tennessee team, was probably their corners and man coverage, and they exposed that too. I thought Tennessee had a chance in this game. I thought they would get pressure onto Will Howard. I thought Nico would be able to make some big throws against an Ohio State defense that I thought had been a bit overrated so far this year. No, they didn't. It was that looked like the most expensive team in college football.
Right.
And I don't mean that as a slight. Like that looked like the juggernaut that they built this offseason. Chip
Kelly did some soul searching after the Michigan loss, him and the rest of the staff, and they came out with just a stellar game plan. The defense was on lockdown and the offense cooked. And this was, like I said at the very beginning of this segment, this was what we expected Ohio State to be this year, is what we just saw. So they're going to play Oregon in the Rose Bowl. We're getting Pac-12 versus Big Ten. It's back. So that's pretty cool. We got a question on the screen.
Yep. Yeah, from Sam Kim. Question: would the ACC veto a change to remove the auto seeding for 2025?
Would the ACC see it benefits the ACC, right?
I think so. It did this year. I
No, it
think,
didn't. You're right. It didn't
yeah,
benefit us this year.
but I think on most years it would. Like you would assume the ACC champ is usually a top 8, 9 team.
God, our conference, man.
I
It's
mean,
just,
it was if Miami wins either Georgia Tech or Syracuse, Miami is in there at a
Mhm.
higher seed. And I think if, Clemson,
It took a perfect storm for us to
it
not
really
be
did. It
top
really
4
did. Like
seed.
it was close. I don't think they would, but I'm not totally sure what they want to do at this point. I don't
No.
really trust the ACC's leadership to do anything right. So I,
I think we want it to stay the same for at least one more year because that's all it's going to stay the same for. Like I think the ACC benefits in general from being guaranteed a bye if they don't have a 3-loss champion.
yeah, and I would also say this was a weird year where you had the Big 12 champ was like a wild card team that was only supposed to win 4 or 5 games. That goes 10-2. And then from the Big 10, you had a random team in Indiana pop up out of nowhere and grab a spot. Like that doesn't really happen a lot. There are some teams you expect to win 8, 9 games that end up winning a conference, but rarely a team that's not supposed to make a bowl. 2 teams that aren't supposed to make a bowl, in Indiana and Arizona State being top 12 teams.
Yeah.
So that was a little abnormal to have
But they
two
were
of
going to
those in the
have a
same year.
champion. They were going to have a decent champion, whether it was BYU, Colorado, or Arizona State. They're not the problem. Boise going 11-1 and their only loss being to the number 1 undefeated team is why we're not sitting there. Like,
I mean, it's going to happen next year. There's going to be a group of 5 team that goes 11-1 or 12-0.
yeah, but
Happens every year.
most of those teams are not going to have a Heisman contender, and they're
Mhm.
not going to have lost their only loss being to a 12-0 team. Like that's just very unusual.
Yep.
All right, let's get to the ad read, then we'll do VT Corner. As I said at the top of the show, College Football Monday is brought to you by Jack and Coke. 2 legends, 1 can, Jack and Coke. You can see the can right on your screen. The number 1 cocktail in the world is now available in a can with Coca-Cola, Coke Zero, Cherry Coke. There's even Jack and Ginger. They're fantastic drinks. If you guys haven't tried them, I highly recommend you try Jack and Coke. 2 legends, 1 can, ready to drink. Just go pick it up. It's ready to go to the tailgate. Don't gonna mix anything. And as always, when you're having those drinks, whether it's at a game or this next couple days over the holidays, I know we're all gonna be drinking a lot.
Christmas
Hopefully,
morning.
yes, Christmas morning, and that's kind of what I'm drinking right now, Sam.
You're going dark beer. I'm
Can't
going
see that, but I'll
the
show you later.
opposite color.
Is that eggnog?
Yeah, it is eggnog. It is eggnog with that double oaked
Oh,
Woodford
hell yeah.
Reserve. And I'll tell you what, I even went a step further because it's the holidays. A dash of freshly ground nutmeg on top.
Yeah, I mean, you got to spice it up. Do a little bit of that like accent flavor on there. That's
So
awesome, dude.
good.
I love eggnog. I know
It's like
some people like think it's gross, but I like it.
so good. You grow up,
And
be an adult, drink eggnog. Come on.
would you drink eggnog without alcohol in it at a party?
I mean, I did as a child.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
yes, I would.
Okay.
I will say I'm not like the one thing that the bourbon does is it takes the viscosity of it down a bit.
Yep.
It's a little more palatable. I think without that, it's texturally not very pleasing. Have you seen the video of Martha Stewart's eggnog?
She's making it from scratch.
It is the most diabolical
Oh, it's
recipe.
gross, man. It's gross.
It is. It's
You don't
It's
want
an
to see how
absurd
the
amount of
sausage is
alcohol.
made, right? And like you do
It's
not want to see how eggnog is made.
no one needs that much alcohol in their system. No one. No.
Oh, she puts a lot of alcohol in it.
Oh,
you're
she
saying.
puts a lot of dark alcohol in that thing. Yeah.
My buddy makes it from scratch every year. And one year I was like, you know what? I'm thinking about making my own eggnog for a Christmas party. And he sends me the recipe. It's like 60 steps. And I'm like, nah, dude, I'm buying Turkey Hill. And I'm just gonna do
Or
the store
Southern
bought.
Comfort
Or-
is what we're drinking right now.
Oh yeah. And they do the Pennsylvania Dutch. Makes
Mhm.
a phenomenal alcohol included eggnog. It's very, very good. But there was also this funny post that like if you were to drink eggnog, it's extremely caloric, which most people
Yep.
know that. But it's
Gains.
actually got a lot of nutrients in it. Like what's actually in it, you could survive for a while. Yeah, do a workout, grab a pint of eggnog, you'll be gaining in no time.
Well, speaking of gains and drinking eggnog out the jug, are we ready to move to some offensive line talk for the Hokies?
Yeah, let's move to VT corner because we did hire an offensive line coach. Matt Moore comes over from West Virginia. He was the assistant head coach and offensive line coach at West Virginia since 2020. In 2019, he was the offensive line coach and the co-OC. At least that's what I was picking up from his thing. The various biographies that are available online. This was a name that we'd been hearing about for a couple days.
Yep.
And I think it was widely considered to be like, that would be great if we could get this guy.
Yeah. No, I think this was it's hard to call an offensive line coach a home run hire, but this was the guy who was the A+ hire for Virginia Tech to make it. I think it just kind of worked out perfectly. I think it's a really, really good hire. Not only is it someone who is proven to have really good offensive lines, but proven to have good offensive lines at a program level like Virginia Tech and below Virginia Tech, right? Like he had Troy, had a bunch of all conference guys, West Virginia, a bunch of all conference guys. He's not doing it with elite stud recruits, with a massive recruiting budget, with getting all the transfers. He's doing it with program development. And that's what Tech really needs, because I don't care who's in the building. Virginia Tech's not going to be pulling in 4- and 5-star offensive linemen all the time.
Yes, it's very true. So you can kind of see how our offensive line will look if you just look at what he's had over the past 4 to 5 years at West Virginia, because it's a very similar level of recruit that we can both achieve at this stage in the game. Now, if we were to take our wins and our program up a level, maybe it would increase. But as recently as 2023, he was a Broyles nominee for having a fantastic offensive line. The Broyles Award goes to the top assistant in the country. He did not win, but he was nominated because the 2023 offensive line for West Virginia was awesome.
So
they were what it was. I had it 4th in rush yards per game, 14th in yards per carry, number 3 nationally in sacks allowed per game. So elite offensive line a year ago for West Virginia.
And, for the nerdy stats, 2023, 15th in EPA per rush, 2024, 34th in EPA per rush. And that's with losing a lot of guys. So I think this is somebody who has a consistent track record as well. It's been every year of every stop they've been able to run the football.
They have. Now, I will say his 2023 stats in terms of rush average, sacks allowed, it's a little bit of an outlier. Like, it's an extremely good year. And that also goes to your resume. But I am just saying that not every year is phenomenal as 2023. Like, for instance, this year, Virginia Tech ran for more yards per carry than West Virginia. We know that's because we had an extremely special running back.
Yeah.
So on a consistent basis, he's been solid and he'll break through and have a phenomenal year. He's also extremely experienced. He's about 50 years old. He's coached at Texas Tech in the past. He's coached at a lot of power programs and knows the game. He's an adult in the room, as something we've been asking for Virginia Tech to have more of. And so I'm excited about the hire. And maybe the most exciting thing about Matt Moore, put a guy in the draft last year, Frazier, center, is on the Steelers now, was a 2nd-round pick. This year, he's got another kid in Millam who's probably going to be a 2nd-round or maybe even a 1st-round pick. So we're talking about back-to-back drafts where he's going to have an offensive lineman drafted. Not many coaches can say that, and especially not drafted in the top 2 rounds or 3 rounds, which I'm not sure where Millam will go, but it's going to be pretty high.
Yeah. And I would also say, again, Virginia Tech has not been able to recruit offensive line forever. I mean, never have. And I don't think that's going to change. So you need somebody who can work with what he's got, develop talent, find the right guys in the portal, find the right guys in recruiting. And, under Brent Pry, the first guy didn't care about any of that. And then the second guy couldn't recruit. And so it was like they needed to make a change there, and this was the A++ hire.
It was. It was.
I
I
think
said on Twitter today that this is a big boy hire. Like it
Mhm.
really is. Like if we're promoting Brent Davis, God love him, that's not big boy. This is another
Yeah.
power school's offensive line coach who was nominated for the Broyles Award. This is as good as Virginia Tech could ask for right now with the state of everything that's been going on. It's very good. And the fact that now he can lean on, hey, I'm putting guys in the NFL when he comes to Virginia Tech. Like that's not even something he could lean on before necessarily.
Mhm.
So he will be at the peak of what he can sell and his coaching acumen when he gets to Virginia Tech. And
Yep.
I'm not trying to be hyperbolic. That's just where he is in his career. And so this was extremely good for us. And if you look at what David Cunningham put out in terms of the PFF stuff, he compared our run blocking grade and our pass blocking grade over the past 5 years to what WVU's been doing. And it's not even really close. Like maybe there's a year where one of ours is higher than the other one, but by and large, they killed us in every PFF
Mhm.
score. So it's awesome. I'm very pleased with this.
He's gotta get to work
Yes.
because he's got a lot of work to do, man. This offensive line is decimated through portal, through injuries, through the lack of, uh, I I would say the lack of high level recruiting, and you have a bunch of guys here who are we don't know. Like, we don't know
It's a
what some of these young
hodgepodge of
guys
who
are,
knows. Yes.
and we don't know what position they play. We don't know what stylistically they play.
hmm
Who knows, man? So he's got a lot of work to do. He will.
You
I think going into the spring ball. I mean, this is looking way forward, Pete, but this is probably the one position group that you can grab the most of from spring ball. I think is going to be this group, like what they look like in terms of who's playing where, what do the makeups look like, who are the transfers they brought in, because it's probably the most important offseason position group Tech has.
definitely. But did you see the fact that there are 3 West Virginia offensive linemen in the portal?
I'll take all three.
Yeah, give me all 3. I mean,
Mhm.
hopefully we can grab 1 or 2, but I have to imagine
And
one of
grabbing
those
it
kids
from
are
West Virginia, especially after the last 2 games against the Mountaineers went like that, it does feel a little good.
yeah. We need to get at least one of those kids, and they're all massive kids. Like those are they weren't small gentlemen. The ones I know they're offensive linemen, but like you know how some offensive linemen are young in their career and they're maybe
Mhm.
285. No, these guys were all like 315 or something. Get me a 1 or 2 of those guys, and I will be a very happy camper. We're still waiting on our DC and our strength and conditioning hire, but this is a good appetizer for those 2 things. So very pleased with the Matt Moore hire. Let's move to the guys that are coming back next year. We heard from Jaden Keller, Aiden Green, Keyshawn Burgos, Tucker Holloway, Kelvin Gilliam, and the most important one to me, Sam, Caleb Woodson.
Yep. Yeah, all good keeps. I think people are kind of annoyed with people announcing that they're coming back. I would just be happy they're coming back.
That's what I'm
Uh,
focusing on.
yeah, and it's, Caleb Woodson's a guy who I think, seems to have improved week over week since being at Virginia Tech. Jaden Keller is a guy who made a big step this year, has a lot of room to grow, but made a good step this year. Gilliam is a guy who came in as a transfer, played really well this year. All good gets, like really important to keep those guys. Also think really important Tucker Holloway, who's dealt with injuries. That's an important guy as a veteran to have in that wide receiver room. It's
We
like
needed Holloway to come back.
he's immediately going to have a team leadership role. And I think that's going to be really big for this team.
Yeah, his video was great that he put out. I told you how few veterans we have at wide receiver, and you throw in the All-American punt return status that he could get. He's vital. Like that was a huge keep. And Keller, there was a lot of talk about him, but you cannot deny the improvement that he showed this year. If we get these kids, Woodson and Keller, a really good linebacker coach, they could be phenomenal. They really
Mhm.
could. We could have a great inside linebacker year. Not exactly sure what's going to go on at Star. We're going to see what Caleb Spencer brings in the bowl game. But it's exciting because there's so much potential at that linebacker position again.
I would not I would not assume Virginia Tech is going to run the same formation next year. I think they might mix some stuff up.
So that's what a topic that French and I discussed last week was this DC hire. Is it within the Pry coaching tree to essentially run Bud's and Pry's system? Like Pry's system is more or less Bud's system. Like they're very similar.
Yeah.
And French was saying like the group of people that can run that and run that well is not the largest group in the coaching community.
Yeah, I think the one thing that would point me to say that they might do something with a little bit different flavor is their inability to nail guys down to positions. I think it's a lot easier when you are recruiting at what Brent Pry was at Penn State, and you have the ability to bring in a bunch of just big time athletes. And you just kind of put them anywhere. You have a lot more to choose from. Virginia Tech, you're not going to have that amount of luxury. You have to be much more precise with your recruiting and where you position guys. And the fact that they struggled so much for 3 years now at where to put guys at linebacker, maybe they rethink how they run that position. I don't know.
It's possible.
On the same side, Xavier Deeby's in this program. Do you think he gets a shout for linebacker coach?
Yeah, I could see it happening because if they were to go with a DC that doesn't coach linebackers, for example, Poindexter doesn't coach linebackers, then you need a linebacker coach, and you could move Sean Quinn over potentially, but he's done a pretty good job where he is.
Yeah,
and so yeah, Sam, I could see a DB getting that role if the DC that comes in doesn't coach linebackers.
Yeah. Yep. We'll see.
But the Woodson one was huge. And getting Gilliam, I mean, I know we expect a lot of these guys come back, but you don't know until they tell you. You really don't.
Yeah,
so
you really don't.
Nice to see.
And it's gonna be hovering over that player all the way through to fall camp if they don't say that they are coming back.
Yeah. I think it's safe to say if they do make a video or the announcement that they're coming back, that there was probably like a payment involved. Like a lot of these videos are like Triumph
I think you can read
videos if you look at the logos. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's fair. And I think also, for some people who are maybe plugged into just Virginia Tech, I would point out that pretty much every other program is doing the same thing right now. Like, this is not a Virginia Tech specific phenomenon. And I also think if you look at Virginia Tech's transfer portal in and out, doing a whole lot better than some schools are, man. Yeah. A whole lot better, especially with a coordinator change.
And this was Les's comment on the O-line coach. He said, Matt Moore looks like a fantastic hire for OL coach. Hope he can bring a couple OL players with him. Our thoughts exactly, Les. Thank you for the comment. We are definitely hoping for that. The latest on the portal from the Hokies. We talked about Sherrod Koval with French. Went over that a little bit. So that was a nice addition at safety. I think because he was recovering from an ACL and bouncing between positions, he could play his best football with us of his career. Like, quite honestly, because he was playing well before he tore his ACL in 2023 and then had to play recovering from that last year. So I think that's a great addition in the safety room. We got another addition in the safety room, Sam, in Tyson Flowers from Rice.
Big time.
He's got a nice grade on 247.
Yeah, he was really good. He's been good at Rice for a few years now. Part of last year, they had a pretty darn good defense that he was a part of. And then this year, they struggled a little bit. But again, he performed really well. I think Tech feels a lot better right now than they did a few days ago at the defensive back spot, especially at the safety room. I think they'll still go out and try to get guys. I believe they got Quentin Reddish's younger brother as well.
Older brother,
excuse me.
Yes, Joe Reddish. He is the older brother of Quentin, who's on our team. He comes from D2 Wingate, and I think that's in North Carolina. Nick is the youngest brother, and Nick is like an 88 on 247 right now in the 26 class.
Mhm.
So, and it was cool today because Quentin put out something like about all the brothers they've had at Virginia Tech, and maybe it was Joe, but whatever. They both were tweeting about it. So they get to play together. And if this helps us get Quentin, well, that would be icing on the cake. But I think it was Evan Watkins was saying, like, don't sleep on what Joe could bring to the table. Like
Mhm.
he could, if nothing else, provide depth, but we need help at safety. And he's more of a veteran. He's got 2 years left, but he's more of a veteran. And it's just going to be fun to have, another set of brothers play for Virginia Tech.
And a guy named Flowers playing defensive back for Virginia Tech. It went pretty well the first time.
That's true. Tyson
Yeah.
Flowers, great name. Great name. And he may be more impactful than Koval, honestly.
Yeah. Yeah. And I will say they're also kind of building out that safety room style athlete on defense, maybe more than just that room, pretty well with Flowers, with Koval, keeping Reddish. And you also have Caleb Spencer, who showed flashes this year, who's kind of that hybrid safety linebacker guy as well. So you do have some promise in that room. I think a lot of Tech fans felt like that was a skeleton crew going into next year.
It's interesting that a position where French he didn't pull punches on Pearson Prelu. Other people have been saying things about Pearson Prelu at the safety position as the coach there, but we bring in 2 safeties. So it kind of seems like all is status quo. Now, it might not be that, but like, hey, man, if Pearson or whoever else is going out and bringing in some talent that we desperately need at that position, well, then maybe they should be the coach. But French was just saying in terms of the positioning of how the guys were playing this year and some of last year, safety wasn't one of our stronger positions, and I'll leave it there.
Yeah. I think rush defense from the safeties, good. Pass defense from the safeties, bad. And that's 50% of the game. So that's like, but it also does point to me. I don't want to read too much in between the lines, and makes me believe that they're maybe not going after a safety's primary defensive coordinator. That's just kind of my vibe that I'm getting there. But who knows, man? The transfer portal is a weird thing.
And I don't think you can base your DC hire on who any of your assistants are.
Yeah. And I would also say, I don't know how forthcoming schools are with transfer portal recruits at this time about coaching changes.
Yeah.
And that's not Virginia Tech specific. It's kind of Virginia Tech related, but I don't think that's a Virginia Tech phenomenon. Like, other schools are kind of doing this too. You have to just try to get guys in the building and then make the coaching hires as they come.
All right, so let's go to another position that we loaded up on in terms of just the portal. 2 running backs, Sam, come in pretty much back-to-back last week. Terrion Stewart from Bowling Green was the first one. He's an 87 on the 247 transfer rankings. And then Marcellus Hawkins, someone that was on no one's radar screen for the most part, a D2 guy. He also comes in. They both have like pretty good size in terms of their weight.
Mm-hmm.
Terrion Stewart is 5'9", 220. Bowling Green, more like bowling ball. Am I right?
He's got a little Lee Suggs to him. I'll tell you, if you haven't watched, like, just YouTube, Twitter, search his name, his highlights are insane. Like, he is running over dudes, stiff arm, running away from people. He terrorized Georgia Tech a couple years ago. He did really good in the MAC. And I know you're saying, oh, it's like a MAC guy, whatever. He was dominant, like absolutely dominant. I think he is the best pickup that they've had so far. I think he is a day one. I think he's a day one starter. I think he's the guy. You bring him in and he's the guy. I'm really excited about that one. It is a room, though, you need depth because guys get injured all the time.
Yep.
And Tech probably
did 2 of them, I guess, because we weren't necessarily sure how many you need, but like we only had 4 before this. So now this makes our running back room 6, and that's probably about the right number.
Yeah, and you have like Overton as a guy who's going to be a true freshman. I think you're really excited about his potential, but you're not going to go into a season being like, yeah, this true freshman is going to get 30% of our carries. It's not a recipe for success usually. So
Strategy.
you
No,
want to have
I
depth
love
there. Yeah.
Overton too, but I agree with you.
Yep.
If you look at Stewart's career, Sam, it's got over 2,000 yards and 6 yards a carry over the entire tenure. 6
Yeah,
yards a
that's pretty
carry.
nasty.
Like, that's not normal. Like, normally you struggle a little bit your freshman year, you get your feet under you. Like, this year he ran for 5.6, and for his career he's at 6.0. So, like,
Yeah.
this was less than some of the other years, and Bowling Green was a very feisty team this year, as we've talked about many times. So, I think it's almost 400 carries in his career, 6 yards a carry.
Yeah, and he did have like a couple injuries this year. Like I don't think he played in the game against Penn State. But I do remember him playing in the game against Texas A&M. So I'm going to look up the stats from that game
If you're
as well.
expecting him
Yeah.
to catch out of the backfield, he hasn't done it. He has like one catch a season. So maybe he will going forward, but he hasn't shown that skill to this point. I'm assuming he can block.
You would hope so. I mean, goodness gracious, at that size, you hope so. Yeah, it looks like he got hurt at the beginning of the season there for a little bit, but came back and had some really good games. 15 carries for 150 versus Western Michigan. He had 21 carries for 99 against Toledo, 25 carries for 124 yards against Kent State. Like, those aren't great defenses, but he's a workhorse back. And I think that feels really good for Virginia Tech.
And with both of these guys, whether it's Hawkins or Stewart, you got to trust this staff. Like,
yeah,
they went in and he was great. And I know it's not a large sample size, but like, I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt that based on what I've seen from Stewart and just the highlights and stats that I've been able to look and watch, I'm going to trust him on Hawkins as well. This kid ran for 6.7 yards per carry in 2023 and over 1,000 yards. I know it's D2, but he didn't run for 2 yards a carry. He ran for nearly 7. So you upgrade his offensive line and maybe he could do 5 yards a carry at this level and he provides us some depth. I don't know, but I'm going to trust the staff on both of those guys. And it's exciting because I think Stewart is really going to be valuable. The last position we haven't talked about, well, there was a couple corners too, I guess. Talked about Reddish, but we didn't talk about Isaiah Brown Murray coming over from East Carolina. He's 5'9", 192. And I don't know a ton about him, but corner was a definite need. And he's probably going to provide some depth, if nothing else. And then on the D line, we got Priester from Hampton. And what stands out about him is just his size.
He's huge. He's huge. And what also stands out about him and the kid from ECU, multiple years of eligibility left. So those are a couple guys who you can bring in and get in the program and have a couple years of. And I know that's crazy, right? A player playing for more than 1 year in a program, but feels good there. Defensive tackle, they needed a guy. Corner, they needed a guy. Like, this staff has a lot of flaws, man, but give them credit. The changes made this offseason and the transfer portal additions have been very poignant, very strategic. It feels like everything has been purposeful this offseason. Maybe not moving at the speed that it needs to, but definitely feel like they have a strategy going forward this offseason. Now all they have to do is win the games, Pete.
Yeah, I mean, listen, none of these guys. I love Stewart. I like the addition of Priester and his size, and Flowers is exciting. None of these are like, oh, we got Singleton from Georgia Tech. It's not, we haven't gotten a star quarterback or something like that. But that's the beauty of what our staff has done over the last couple of years. They're not great at everything, but they're good at evaluating out of the portal for the most part. And you talked about multiple years, like APR played multiple years for us. Felton, Lane, Tootin, Gilliam is going to play another year for us. Drones is going to play multiple years for us. That's what you want. You don't want your coaches going out and getting 1 year mercenaries. That you want them selling them on the program so they can develop further. Cunningham, we haven't heard that he's leaving off the O-line. Like he might get a chance to contribute next year. for us,
Yeah.
and that would be nice because we need offensive line.
I think there are some portal additions that will be made in the next few weeks, especially in the offensive line. And then I think there's a whole window after spring.
Yeah.
And that's usually when you can get the big time talent from a big program who's not going to start and go somewhere else kind of movement. So
That's
there's a lot of
exactly when we got APR and when we
Mhm.
got Curtis Perry. It didn't work out. But it's also when we got Gilliam, right?
Yep. Yeah. So there's time. I think the defensive coordinator thing is interesting. We'll see. I mean, I don't have any inside information on that, Pete, but it makes me believe that that person is still coaching, whether that's at college football or
I
whether
think
it's in the
so.
NFL.
I
Don't know
think
who
so.
that is. Could be anybody. So it makes me think that they have someone there.
I think they know who the DC is. And I just think that they could still be playing or they're choosing to roll it out after the O-line thing got rolled out. But right now at DB, I think we're set. I don't think we're finding
Mhm.
any more DBs. We're bringing in a bunch of freshmen, and then we're bringing in a bunch here. We have 18 DBs rostered for next year. I think we're good there. Now, things are changing with the 85 to 105 thing. What we've heard is that Tech's going to come in around 90, maybe a little
Mhm.
over 90. But nevertheless, we're sitting at 77 scholarships right now. So we still have 13 more. If we're doing the 90 thing, we have 13 more. And you're gonna give nods to some guys. Like maybe George Balance gets a Scully. Maybe some
Mhm.
other guys that were walk-ons previously will get Scullies. But we still got a lot of work to do in the portal. And I'd like to see, Sam, at least one offensive lineman come in before this window closes.
You would really like to have those guys for spring ball.
Yeah.
Like really, really would like to have those guys for spring ball. And I also think fans should know like somebody's going to leave after spring ball.
Yes.
That's kind of how this thing works. So I would expect a little bit of movement here. I'd expect a little in-staff shuffling. Brent Price said that a couple times now that that's kind of a direction that they think they're going to go. Whatever that means, I'm not sure,
Mm-hmm.
but we'll see. We also didn't mention Gunter Brewer, wide receivers coach, advisor, assistant
Freak
thing,
facts.
high school relations guy. He took the wide receiver job at Marshall. It's a place that he previously coached. He coached Randy Moss at Marshall.
His claim to fame. He's going back.
Yeah. I've heard it's a big loss. I didn't see it on the field.
Wide receivers weren't that great this year.
He's coached some good wide receivers, but I think Pete, you and I could coach Randy Moss. I have full faith.
There was multiple reasons why I say the thing about the wide receivers. Like I have a lot of hope for the position because of what Fontel Mines has done, the way he's recruited. But I think we were all disappointed with the production we got out of the wide receivers. Part of that falls in the scheme. Part of that falls on the O-line. Part of that falls on Kyron Drones. And so I think it's going to continue to be one of our strongest positions because of the talent we're bringing in and because of Fontel Mines. We need to have less drops next year and we need to get more production. Speaking of wide receiver, Sam, the last thing I'll say on the portal, we are pursuing Sam Phillips out of Chattanooga.
Good, strong name.
Yeah, it's a good name. It's a good name. So this guy seems like he could be a Virginia Tech lean. There was an article put out today on him. We need at least, I think, one more veteran wide receiver, and I think this would be it.
Yeah. Jalen Lane-esque player, kind of that hybrid slot outside guy. I think he would be a really good addition. I don't think he's a game breaker by any means. And again, you don't know how the FCS to FBS transition is so big for some guys. You don't really know how they're going to react to it, but he would be a really good pickup. He was very productive at Chattanooga. He fits the profile of what's been successful in this offense before.
Mm-hmm.
So sure, why not?
All right, so we'll have a bowl preview coming to you guys. I think it's Sunday night or Monday morning will get dropped in your feed, but we're going to combo it up with the Sons of Saturday boys. You're going to get four of us talking about the bowl, me, Sam, Pat, and Billy. That's going to be fun. We're probably going to record that on Sunday. after Christmas. So you'll get that Monday leading into bowl week. And that's we still got to do some research, Sam. We got to figure out who's playing for both teams.
I think we have a decent idea who's playing for Virginia Tech. Minnesota, I haven't dug a lot on. I will say PJ Fleck historically as a coach and Minnesota historically as a program take bowl games seriously. They're not a big opt-out program.
Yeah.
So I think you're going to get a full swing from the Gophers. Should be interesting. These two teams really even across the board. So we'll see how the Hokies stack up with a bit of a depleted roster against the mostly full strength Gophers.
Yeah, and we don't know exactly where our roster stands. There's still a few guys we're waiting to hear on, but I worry about the offensive line, Sam, because we've already lost a couple transfers, or seemingly, and the older Moore brother may also not be playing. That's the biggest thing to me. I love the idea of just letting Pop go out there and fling it around.
And I think Tech has a lot of guys who are going to be playing for spots next year, and I think they'll have the crowd advantage. And we'll see. I mean, bowl games are weird, man. They're weird.
You don't know what could happen. So let me do a quick beer review before we do our last ad read and talk a little bit about the spreads on round 2. But I mentioned Christmas morning. This is the Kentucky Christmas morning. A little hard to get in the screen here, but they serve it in this. I found these medicine bottles of it at my local store last year. So this is a 2023 Kentucky Christmas morning, and this is their regular Christmas morning beer conditioned on the bourbon barrels. And you do get the vanilla, the coconut, the oak, ginger, vanilla, honey, cinnamon, like any kind of those Swedish flavor, Christmassy flavors, not Swedish, but sweet-ish. Come through on this thing. But the regular Christmas morning is a phenomenal beer. I had that last week. I don't think I even talked about it. I might have been when I was doing the French interview, but like we were talking that ended. I was like, I didn't talk about my beer. Regular Christmas morning is awesome. It's something that Beer Control on Twitter has mentioned is like his favorite Hardywood beer. But the Kentucky is the stronger version of that. It's 12.2%. Might be why I'm having a hard time crafting thoughts at this stage, because I'm getting close to the bottom here. But it is, if not the best beer that Hardywood puts out, it is a close second. It is so good. I share this with my brothers every year. I'll bring a few of these. I got 8 of these bottles. This is the first one I've cracked from 2023. So I finally got into them. I'll take some down this weekend, but it's so good. I highly recommend the Kentucky Christmas morning. And it honestly works as a breakfast beer. Like, it's a little strong, yes, but if you're a beer lover and you're with your family and everyone's opening gifts, this is a great accompaniment. I mean, we're talking about if you want to talk about an untapped score, it's as close to a 5.0 as you're going to get from me. Like, it is right up there. Yeah.
Nice. Yeah. I think the Christmas beers are very close to gimmicky. Like, they toe that line a lot of times. And when breweries get it right, it works so well. So I'll have to try that one out. I'll have to find some. I'll be up in Richmond so I can get some more Richmond specific beers.
Dude, you got it. Yeah. Because normally what they do is, even after Christmas, you'll be able to find this, even in like the Wegmans or in Kroger, you'll be able to find the Kentucky Christmas morning. And these little bottles are great because you can store them, save them for like up to 5 years, and they're still going to be fresh and age really well. Like, sometimes they're better a year later. So that's why I purposely haven't opened any of these since I got them at the end of last year. But they also they put these on some roasted coffee beans as well. So you get some coffee notes. Like, it's so many flavors, and yet it just combines so well. So yes, the Kentucky Christmas morning, it's a 5.0.
Beautiful.
College Football Monday is brought to you by Roback. I know we're getting right to the edge. You probably can't order any more Roback, but if you want to and get some of those sales after Christmas, use code 2DEEPVT for 20% off your order. We've been talking about them all season. And next year, Sam, we may have to get some new sponsors, because we did some work this year, you and me. I want to say it's like 70 episodes this season.
Yeah.
This year. Like, so we're talking over an episode a week for an entire year.
Yeah.
And that warrants some love from a lovely new sponsor. So we're going to be looking for some beer sponsors, some alcohol sponsors, any kind of sponsor this upcoming year. If you happen to know someone or you want to advertise on the show, I've got some numbers I could share with you that you'd be surprised. We've done quite well this year. It's credit to Sam, to myself, and everyone that listens. We really, really appreciate you guys.
Yeah, I mean, we're surprised. Not only would you be like, we're surprised. Like, it's been awesome, consistent week after week. What a blessing it is. And, thank you to everyone listening. We see that, well, we have that viewership number in the top left corner when we do lives. Awesome. Blows my mind. Every time we look at numbers, whether it's with, the podcast, with the YouTube, Sons of Saturday articles, blows my mind.
And the funniest part is, Hokie Nation, we're not very good.
No.
Like, imagine if we could win 8 or 9, 10 games, what the viewership numbers and listenership could be. But you know what? Y'all are here in the hard times, and we appreciate that. Let's talk a little bit ACC and bowls, Sam. They're 0-3 so far. Cal lost to UNLV, and of course, the two teams in the playoff lost. We got Pitt versus Toledo on Thursday. You think we get that one?
I hope. I don't think Toledo is very good, so I'm gonna go Pitt.
Yeah, I think Pitt can pull that one off. But with lots of teams in action Friday and Saturday, including the one I'm looking forward to in Miami against Iowa State in the Pop-Tarts Bowl.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, first off, a tradition unlike any other. Truly unlike
it really
any
is.
Other.
It's going to be one of the most watched bowls for sure.
It is, and I think it is too. I shout out to Cam Ward and a few of those Miami players. Shout out to the guys from Colorado playing in their bowl game, adamant about it. They want to play. They're excited to play. I really like Miami in this game. I think they match up really well against Iowa State. So I like the Canes to win this one in the Pop-Tarts Bowl.
Yeah, so I did. Rich Luttenberger, who's a writer for us, is having a bowl pool. And this is my Excel file that he sent, and I had to print out and send back to him because Rich is straight up old school. I am 7-5 in bowl picks so far, Sam, against the spread. And I'm trying to see my Miami game here. Yeah, Miami's 3.5-point favorites. Oh, I took Iowa State. So we will see see what happens there. I think so much of what happens in bowls too, I was basically like, if a team lost their coach, I'm taking the other team. Like that's
fair.
That's kind of what I was doing because they're so hard to predict, especially against the spread. Like,
and it's literally about like which team feels like playing that day. Like that's really what it comes down to a lot of times. So that's why I will never say one is gonna. One team cannot win a game because who knows? Who knows?
The reason I went against Miami was because they had playoff aspirations this year. They expected to be in a better bowl. I don't know where their head's going to be at. Iowa State might have had those aspirations.
Iowa State definitely did too.
Not as pronounced, perhaps. And it's Matt Campbell. I'm going to give him the coaching edge. So
that's fair.
The FCS championship is set. Montana State going up against North Dakota State again. North Dakota State finds themselves back in the championship game. I think they were on a hiatus last year and maybe even the year before. There's been some other teams that have been popping up, and particularly South Dakota State Jackrabbits. Like they've been really good.
Awesome. Yeah, but this year it's Montana State, North Dakota State. I'm going with the Bobcats of Montana State, going for the perfect season. Touchdown Tommy Mellott, throwing to none other than Taco Dowler. You can't make this stuff up. They've been electric on offense. There, they've won every game. The only game they haven't won by 2 scores is when they beat New Mexico at New Mexico to start the season. So
Montana State,
they're good.
Is awesome. They're so good.
Their offense is so beautiful to watch. Everything is schemed. Everything is blocked. It's flawless. It's flawless.
It's funny to me that Montana State, this is how it works in FCS, right? Like one of the teams in the state from the Pacific Northwest or the middle of the country gets good. And then the other one decides to get good because it started with North Dakota State and then it was South Dakota State and then South Dakota, then North Dakota. Montana was good for decades and now Montana State's really good. It's just funny how it the tide raises all boats here.
Yeah. I mean, it's the state of Montana and the Dakotas, man. Good football. Really
Very,
good
very good
football.
FCS football for sure. So that's on the traditional day that would normally be the national championship day, 1/6, 7 p.m. Of course, with the playoff, the FBS championship is going to be like on the 21st or something. It's later in the month. Playoff preview, Sam. We'll go over the lines quickly and we'll close this thing out. We'll do a better preview a week from tonight.
Mhm.
We'll come back on College Football Monday, do a full preview, kind of like we did last week with Billy, and go over these games. But Penn State versus Boise State. Boise State, 10.5-point underdogs in the Fiesta Bowl. It's hard to take Boise State, even with that big line.
I really, really want to root for Boise State in this game. I really, really do. I think Penn State.
You can root for them.
But Pete, we bet the numbers, not the team. And I think Penn State might whoop that ass. So right now I'm leaning Nittany Lions.
Okay. All right. We got a comment from Casey Hamrick. Casey was the one that joined us last week talking all the games, but he was at the Ohio State game and took in that win. He's got to be feeling good. You can see from the comment. Merry Christmas, boys. Hopping in here late. How about those Bucks? Well, we're getting Bucks versus Ducks this weekend in the Rose Bowl, as God intended. Big Ten versus the Pac-12. Oregon underdogs. Sam.
Again, bigger underdogs than they were in the first game. Actually, this is going to be the real test of rest versus rust. Like, which one is it? And I am an Oregon national title future holder. I'm going to stick with that. Therefore, I am not betting this game. I think it's going to be a great game. I think it is a much more challenging matchup for Ohio State's defense than what they just played. And it is not in the horseshoe. I'm going Ducks. But that's probably just my bias talking.
Are you going Ducks? I guess you're going outright. If it's a 2.5-point spread, are you going Ducks outright or just against the spread?
Quack attack.
Quack attack. All
Addicted
right.
to quack. Yep.
Ohio State D hasn't given up a passing touchdown since last Oregon matchup. That's hard to believe, but I'm gonna believe Casey on that. That's a hell of a stat.
That mean, you know what that means, Casey?
They're due.
They're due. They're due.
I think the line right now is a reaction to what we just saw, which was a dominating Ohio State performance. And
yeah, I think that's totally fair too. Because they looked to play to their full potential in that game. So I think it's a totally fair line. I think it makes sense.
When they played last time, Sam, was it 2 or 3 points? What was the margin that Oregon won by? It was very close.
It was just 2. It was like 32-30, something like that.
Yeah.
It was less than it was a field goal game.
My point by saying that is that was in Austin. It was 1 point.
It was like 31-30, something like that. It feels so long ago.
It does feel like forever ago. But on a neutral site, I'm just surprised this isn't a pick 'em. Like there's some like Ohio State being favored. Like they have the ceiling of what we just saw against Tennessee. They have the floor of what we saw against Michigan. And we like those are their last 2 games. And we saw both editions of Ohio State. And say what you want about them being their head against Michigan. It happened. And Oregon's really damn good, man. That Penn State team that just destroyed SMU was fighting for their life against Oregon. They could not get a stop.
Could not get a stop.
So I like Oregon. They were my national championship pick. I'm definitely taking Oregon with the points. I don't know who's going to win, but I'm definitely taking Oregon with the points.
Rest versus rust. Going to be interesting.
Yeah,
also,
that's what Casey's talking about. Rest versus
rust.
Just
chef's kiss uniform matchup in the Rose Bowl.
It's going to look really good on television. They're going to do that overhead shot. It's going to be red and it's going to be green and it's going to be perfect. So,
yes.
And how great is that for the holidays? We're getting a little red and green matchup. All right, let's move to the Peach Bowl. Texas versus Arizona State. Arizona State, the biggest underdogs of the weekend, 14 points.
This is a Holiday Bowl matchup, and you can't tell me otherwise. This should be played in the Alamo Dome.
It's going to be played on turf.
Yeah.
It's going to be in the metallic butthole that is Mercedes-Benz Stadium. I don't know. Does the Cinderella shoe on Cam Skattebo, like, is that it? Is it done for it? You know, does they turn into a pumpkin, whatever it is?
I don't want it to be, but at no point in this year has it looked like Arizona State has a shot on the offensive and defensive line against Texas. You know, they've given up some big rushing performances this year already. Like Kansas State, I think almost averaged 10 yards a game, 10 yards a play, rushing the ball against them. I just think it's a really, really tough matchup for Arizona State.
It's a
really tough. Honestly, out of all of the matchups left, I think this and Notre Dame are the two hardest for Arizona State matchup wise.
Yeah, I'm going to take Texas to win. 14 points is a lot.
It's a lot
but they just beat Clemson by 14 points, and part of me thinks Clemson's a better team than Arizona State.
Yeah, and I think this might be like Cam Skattebo might have a great game. He'll probably have 100 yards rushing. No Billy Ray. I know Billy Ray is asking here in the stat. Oh, sorry, I clicked over you, Pete.
You're good.
No, he's not. He's out for the year. So they will have to, they'll have to figure it out without their number one wide receiver.
Arizona State is missing their top wideout, was what Billy asked. And he's still going to be out for this game. They will have Skattebo, which is one of Billy's favorite players ever. And he is a stud.
He's so awesome. He's
been super fun to watch. A very Toby Gerhart-like vibes to Skattebo. And I give them a fighting shot because they have been the hottest team in college football. It's just that Texas defense was stifling.
This feels like close game for a quarter, Arizona State hanging on by a thread, and then boom, it's like touchdown, turnover, touchdown, game's over.
I'm taking Arizona State to cover
right now.
I'm taking them to cover. I don't think they can win the game, but I think they can cover.
If you get a 14.5, if you get that half point, I think Arizona State covers pretty good because Sam Levitt's been a gamer. Skattebo's obviously a gamer.
Levitt's legs. People don't know about Levitt's legs, man. He can break people down. So
yep.
And then the final game we'll talk about, the Sugar Bowl, Notre Dame against Georgia. I believe this is the nightcap. Georgia 1.5 point favorites right now. I think it opened as Notre Dame as a favorite. I would expect, just because of SEC Nation and it being Georgia and recent national champs, that they would be favored by the time this line ends. But it's a close game. It's the closest spread. And we talked earlier about how this is going to be a physical, potentially low-scoring game, in my opinion.
Yeah, this has like 2017 written all over it, right? Like, and it's going to be a tough game. I know Georgia has that bye week, but they have played two really physical games back to back. Like that game against Texas was an insane, hard-hitting game. I'm a little bit curious how they are health-wise. Like how many guys are just beat up that you don't see on the injury report for Georgia? I'm a little curious about that because Notre Dame the game against USC was a bit competitive for a while, but that was more of a shootout. Like they've kind of just walked over people so far. So I think it's going to be a really interesting matchup. I'm picking the Irish, but true 50-50 game. True 50-50 game.
Listen, I think the Irish will win the game. I really do. And it's not because I'm anti-SEC. It's not. I just said Texas, I think, will win. But the backup quarterback thing and the fact that Georgia has not slammed the door on just about anyone this year is I can't pick them right now. Like Notre Dame, say what you want about the NIU loss. They've dominated everybody else. Like it has not even been a contest. And no, those aren't Georgia, but this isn't your older brother's Georgia, because I won't say your dad's, because we're talking about 2 years ago. But this isn't the Georgia that we just saw a couple of years back. With all those guys are on the Eagles right now.
Yeah, it's for sure. I think it is going to be a really interesting matchup between like which offense makes explosive plays. Because, and I'll also say this about Georgia too, their offense has gotten away with a lot of crap. The 20 fumble, I don't know how many it is against, I think after the Texas game, 20 fumbles, only 5 lost. It is staggering. It breaks the sport of football. I don't know how they keep getting away with it. And it's like against a team like Notre Dame, who might be the best team they've played all year, up there with Texas, really going to test Georgia's offense because they will not be able to make mistakes in this game. They won't have the ball enough.
Different style than Texas, but it's just as good of a team.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I would say about Notre Dame. And Georgia did beat Texas twice this year, including a pantsing in Austin. So Georgia can absolutely win. I just think right now, the way Notre Dame has played and the trajectory they're on, they've got, this is like, I said that was a very easy path, or the easiest path they could ask for to get to a semi.
Mm-hmm.
And I maintain that because you're playing a backup quarterback. Call him what you want. I know he's probably like a decently highly rated kid coming out of high school, but like he's their backup and he was the backup for a reason. And I just think Notre Dame's going to beat him.
Yeah.
And after the NIU loss, me predicting Notre Dame to a semi is like unfathomable. But like that's where we're at right now.
I am a known not big Notre Dame fan. So this is a true bet the numbers, not the team.
But those 2 games, Oregon, Ohio State, Notre Dame, Georgia, cannot wait to watch. Like, cannot wait to watch those 2 games. I think they're going to be. I don't think we're going to get blowouts. I'll say that right now. Like, I'll put my stamp on it. I don't think those are going to be blowouts.
Yep.
Well, all right, that's going to do it for this episode, Sam.
We're not doing Boise.
No, we did do Boise.
Did
we not talk Penn State, Boise? That was the first one we talked about.
No, dude, maybe we are. It's been a very long couple of weeks, guys. Maybe
we talked about it. We maybe got like jumped a little early, but we definitely started there. And if you want to say one point on them, go ahead.
Boise, Casey asked this. I think Boise State has a better chance to cover than Arizona State does. Because I think Penn State's ceiling is much lower than Texas's is. Like, I think Texas might drop 45 in that game. They have that. I don't think Penn State has that in their bag against a running football team in Boise State. I think Boise slows the game down. They do have a very good pass rush. Genty can just break some tackles. They'll have stuff up their sleeve. They're rested, neutral site. Boise has a better chance to cover than Arizona State.
Abdul Carter and company, knowing all they have to do is focus on the run.
Play action over the top.
It's not going to be pretty. Like,
really?
I think Penn State is going to completely smother them.
Maybe.
This is why they play the game, Sam. All right, that will do it. Make sure you're subscribed. Sons of Saturday on YouTube, Sons of Saturday on the Spotify and Apple Podcast feed, as well as Too Deep on the Spotify and Apple Podcast feed. We appreciate you guys watching with us all year. We will be back before the end of the year with a bowl preview. Me, Sam, Billy, Pat will be bringing you a Minnesota Virginia Tech preview. Maybe all 4 of us will be down in Charlotte. That would be awesome.
Yeah.
And until next time, though, go Hokies.
Go Hokies.